What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of StoryHive on Location Vancouver with beats, eats, and more! Yes! You did your job right. I'm your host, Kazi. We're broadcasting live right now on the unceded ancestral lands of the Musqueam, the Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish First Nations. Utmost love, gratitude, and respects to the original stewards and protectors of these lands and these waters. Also, a big shout out to TELUS STORYHIVE for powering today's episode. I am very excited for today. We are sitting with a really beautiful, wonderful, amazing person. Someone whose work doesn't just live on the page. It lives in the body, it lives in community, and in the quiet spaces we don't always know how to name. Fanny Kearse is a multidisciplinary artist, poet, storyteller, and curator whose practice traces pathways of self-reclamation, where grief becomes a guide, pain opens portals to the divine, and unbecoming makes room for joy. A Black, queer, Jewish, disabled human, and community tender, Fanny creates spaces that invite us to feel more honestly together. They are the winner of the 2021 Harold Green Theater Monologue competition, author of Umi's Prayer, and an artist in residence at McKenna Elementary. Beyond their own writing, they help hold and shape community through work with All Bodies Dance Project, Curtain Raisers, All Gives, and Black and Rural Arts. Tonight, we're not just talking about poetry and Fanny's creative journey. We're talking about themes of grief, forgiveness, accountability, belonging, and what it means to stay human with each other. Also, for the first time ever, out of 122 live streams, we are doing this with a live audience. Woo! Yeah! Of Fanny's beloveds in their own home. So, audience, please help me welcome to the show your dear and beautiful friend, Fanny Kearse.
Thank you, beloveds.
This is so awesome. I was really looking forward to today's conversation because from pretty much the moment that I met you, which was 2023 Winter Arts Fest, and that you curated that wonderful poetry night, brought Stacey Ann Chin from Jamaica/New York. We had even Hampton performing. Hampton was in the audience, shout outs.
Yeah, Wendy was there too.
Yes. Yeah, and from the moment that I met you, I felt like you were such an intentional person, you know, and that we could always get on a real conversation, which doesn't happen all the time, you know, especially when you see people in social settings. It's always the small talk or the like, everyone's trying to deal with their social anxiety. But like, I felt like I could actually lock in with like, how are you? And it was a real answer. So I knew that today's conversation would be much more of the same. And I resonate with that as like a little emotional Cancer BB where, you know, crying in public, I'm fine with it, actually.
Yeah.
It's part of the human experience. So today's conversation, I really want to start with your creative journey origins. Do you remember maybe the first poem or piece of writing that really spoke to you?
When I was a kid, the first thing that I remember my mom reading me is The Little Prince.
Is that the one about the frog?
No, it's about this little boy who's like stuck on the moon, and it's just like an analogy for life, really. And then also my mom read me a lot of spiritual things like as a very young child, which is honestly what I remember most. A lot of like prayer books and Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh, and like a lot of like very spiritual things.
And as a young kid, how did that speak to you?
I think I was like walking between two worlds a lot as a kid. And I was an only child, so I was like a little weirdo, like always just like doing my own thing and in my own world. And yeah, I was definitely just a little weirdo. But like I was a very spiritual kid. Yeah, I was. And I was also religious. Yeah, I went to synagogue every Saturday with my grandparents. So I think it was all like interwoven. Like I am spiritual now. I'm not very religious. But it was both growing up, and it really was like the pillars and the container of my life. I went to Hebrew school 3 times a week. I went to synagogue every Saturday. Yeah.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
And at what point did you pick up the pen and start expressing yourself?
Oh, I started writing poetry like as a kid. I wrote poetry like I remember in grade 2, I got to go to the Regina Public School Board and recite a poem, and I won an award, and it was very cute. And the poem is still like framed on my mom's wall with my like very little elementary drawing beside it.
Do you remember the poem?
I am 8. I think that's great. With some unity in our community, it's never too late to stop all this hate. Something. So please don't wait. Do something that Mother Earth will really appreciate. Plant a tree and you will see the feeling it gives you will set your heart free.
At 8!
Yeah.
Genius, baby,
Yeah,
genius.
Thank you.
I love that. Do you think that poetry for you began as expression, survival, prayer, or something else?
I think definitely prayer and expression. I think when I returned to poetry in university, it was like a bit more about survival, because I think it was also about trying to like connect to like my Blackness and more of that part of me and my lineage that I didn't have access to growing up.
Tell me more about this foray.
When I went to, let me just smack my lips a little more. When I went to university, oh my God, I don't even know what the hell was going on. Jeez.
This was here or
no,
Saskatchewan?
I did my first year of university at Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, and that was just all entirely too much for 18-year-old Fanny. So then I transferred to the US in Saskatoon. And yeah, so I in school I went into social work, and I think I just like didn't understand all of like my suppressed trauma. I mean, I truly like maybe fully didn't even understand like some concepts of like colonization and like the effects of capitalism. I don't think I like truly realized how we treat Indigenous folks here in Turtle Island. Like, I think there was just like so much.
Yeah.
Like, so much. And like Queens was like a very difficult experience. It was not great. And yeah, again, like, I mean, I was a minority. There's all these things and blah, blah, blah. It was just like, it was very, very difficult. And so I reached for something that I could connect to. And like, I think furthermore, something that could be for just me. And also something that didn't have to feel so academic, like something that I wasn't getting marked on and graded on. And, you know, like I had really good grades in high school, but it was a huge learning curve the first year of university. Like, I remember like my first couple midterms, like failing them, you know, and like English being like, that's my thing. And like, you know, and I mean, that's even part of the reason why I ended up going into social work, is because some of the things that like I loved, I wasn't like getting good grades in university. And I was just like, I just need to finish. Because, you know, I was like, oh, I'm the first one that's going to university. And, you know, so there's like that pressure and thought pattern. And now I think totally different about school. You know, like, yes, university is amazing, education is amazing, and also like
all the things it comes with.
Yeah, and also I'm just like, and like, what is this institution? And it doesn't matter. Like, you can be plenty intelligent without going to school. But, yeah.
So you started writing at that time.
Yeah.
Was this performing yet?
Oh, no. Just like privately writing, mainly for the next decade. And then I was a social worker in an elementary school in Regina. And somebody from Globe Theatre, which is like this really cool theater in the round in Regina, came to do a after-school program with my students. This person has become my Tita Chris, and she's amazing. And she just like so this big like energy, you know, like just sashayed really over to me at the end of the program one day and just said, did you know that you're an artist? And I just like looked at her and I started laughing, and I was like, no, I'm not. Like, I don't do anything. I don't sing. I don't dance. Like, I don't write, like all these things. And And Chris said to me, the way that you interact with the kids and the way that you like hold space, that's art. It's very artful, Fanny. And I was just like, okay, Chris, like you're crazy. I love you. And then she just like kept working me down for a while. She had this show called What Kind of Brown Are You?
Oh my God, I love it.
At the Artesian in Regina, which is an awesome venue. Shout out Artesian. And she invited me as a guest. And so there was like 3 guests. Yeah, her mom like made us rice and spam and eggs. We were like eating and chopping it up. But she really had to like work me down to like come as a guest. And I was really like, no. I was like, I have nothing to say. And Chris was like, I think you have something to say. And so maybe like after 3 months, I was finally like, okay, I'll do one. And then like, you'll stop bothering me. And then I don't know. So I did that. And then a few months later, she asked me to do something else. And it was something with kids. And we facilitated something together. I can't fully remember what it was, some sort of workshop. So then I did that. And then the pandemic happened. And then she convinced me to do a series of like live stream plays during the pandemic, like in this little group, me, her, Joanna Bunden. So I did a series of those. And then I moved here. And then Tita Chris sent me the Harold Green monologue competition and said, you should apply. And I was like, meh. And then Chris was like, just apply. And like literally I applied like at the last second. And then Chris made me a bet that I would win. And she said that if I win, then I have to pursue poetry. And I won. So I often tell Chris that she's the reason. Yeah.
Shout outs to Tita Chris.
Yeah.
And to every person who sees that magic spark in us, that we needed that push and they gave it, and that's, if it wasn't for Tita Chris, where would you be?
Maybe at Kitchener Community School. In Regina.
I love that.
And which also, shout out Kitchener Community School, go Cougars! But yeah, I love those kids, but also I needed to, do my own life. I'm so grateful for the almost decade I spent working in schools, and I truly believe that young people need to be in service more. And I think it I learned so much, and also I was like not really doing like my own life fully.
In that moment of winning and getting that validation, what ignited in you?
I think I was just like, okay, it's just like a little affirmation, I honestly, I think the whole, like, even then I wasn't really like, yes, like,
now I'm doing this.
Yeah, now I'm doing this and I know what to do. Like, I was just kind of like, okay, I'll try to see like what becomes clear, like what's the next step, And then like the next thing that came to me was Vancouver Poetry House. And I was like, this is the perfect meeting of what I did and what I want to do. And so, and then I was like in schools facilitating. And then, the next step, I don't remember what the next step was after that.
But it was one opportunity after the other.
Yeah, just like kind of, yeah. I think because I have like a practice of listening to the silence, then I can like listen better to what the next step is. Obviously, I don't always get it right, and like sometimes I'm messed up in the head and I can't hear anything. But on the good days, or even just like when I'm in my good self, I can listen and just intuitively know what the next step is.
How would you say your writing's changed as your relationship to yourself has changed?
I think it just like continues to become more honest and like more educated. And maybe like not as palatable as, like I think when I first started this and was like trying to figure it out, I was like, okay, how can I like say the truth but also like kind of be light and sort of like keep this sort of like bubbly vibe that I can have. also I can be a stone cold killer, just so you know. Like I
don't
am,
want to experience
yeah,
that.
I am very
Yeah.
bubbly, but like
Yeah.
I gotta switch.
Yeah.
And I'm working on that. I'm really working on it. But so I think like I was really, you know, like even when I think about what I won the Harold Green Monologue competition with, like it was like upbeat, like it was like Black and Jewish, like it was like, oh, let's talk about like all the interesting parts about that, and not like the complex, deeply like polarizing things that are extremely hard to hold. That you know, like that it was like flowery. It was just like, oh wow, yeah, people like, oh, I couldn't believe I was Black and Jewish growing up, but like I'm here, I exist. You know, like it wasn't. There's a lot of things I could have said, and if I was writing that poem today, it would be an entirely different poem. So I think, yeah, just like the level of like honesty that I'm willing to go with, and to maybe just like leave people in a bit of discomfort. I'm not like as
concerned about that.
Yeah. And I think also because I know myself a lot better, I believe that one of my gifts is like being able to like see other people's gifts and like remind them of that, and like then like bring them together. And so when I try to like remind myself, my own self, of my own gifts, I'm like, okay, my one of my gifts is like holding space. So I can leave somebody in a little bit of discomfort. It's okay, because I'm still holding them. I'm not just like letting them free fall, you know?
When you read your old work, do you meet a younger self or a different person entirely?
I mean, I guess that example of the Black and Jewish person, I feel like a different person entirely for that, to be honest. But some poems, just like a younger version of myself that often I have like so much grace for. Like, okay, there's this one poem I wrote that's called like B-Day Slam or something like that. And it was the first birthday that I had when I moved to Vancouver.
It's called B-Day Slam.
That's the title of the poem. It's like really stupid and corny, I think. I don't know, I gotta look at it again. I can't even remember. But I just remember like I felt so happy and excited for myself because it was like my first birthday here, and I like chose the day that I really wanted for myself. Like I have a couple of really good friends from Regina that both live in Vancouver who didn't show up tonight. They said they would, but that's fine.
Just throwing shade on the live stream.
Yeah, I'll throw shade on them.
Yeah.
But so like they were really like, hey, let's like whatever, we're gonna do this for your birthday, blah blah. And I was like, no, I want to spend the day alone. I want to write. Yeah. I want to have a private Pilates session. I want to take Sully on a walk. I want to order food and eat in front of my TV, well, my laptop. Like, I was like, no, I don't want to see you. I'll see you the next day. And that would be a gift that you could give me. And they were just like, God, you beep. That's what they called me. But, you know, so like that poem, it's like, you know, it's maybe not super resonant now, but I still love it. And like when I read it, like I think I read it like 6 months ago, you know, and I was kind of laughing at myself, and because I've evolved and changed and stuff. But I also have like a lot of reverence and sweetness and tenderness for like that version of myself, especially the early Vancouver days when it was, for me, it was like really brave and risky to move out here and like quit my job that, you know, I like had tenure and benefits at. It was like finally kind of like getting somewhere, and I came here and started over, and like I came out, and so I have a lot of actually, you know, I'm sorry, I'm on an aside, I have to say this, because I work with young people, and so this is on my mind, that we need to change the language, because like young people should never have to be like having this like coming out, you know, like because then it's reinforcing this trope that's incorrect, that like the baseline is heterosexual, that's like the norm. And it's not, and that's messed up. And also, and I told my students this the other day, I was like, because one of them was asking me about coming out, and then I was like, wait a minute, you know, it actually wasn't really this like big coming out. I just was like very directly like, no, like I am queer, and I didn't really like wait for like permission or acceptance. It was just like sort of like this is how it is now, and like you can either get with it or like you can get the hell out of my car. You know? And so anyways, that was a random aside, but I just had to say that
No, I
because
love
I
that.
work with young people and I love them and I want the world
Yes.
to be better for them.
And that you're starting new language right here and right now.
Yes.
Instead of a coming out, what are you coming out of if you're already just are?
Yeah, we just are, you know? You can just like let people know who you are. There's no closet.
There's no closet. I'm such a fan of your emails.
Thank you.
I feel like they're like a personal letter to me, even though there's
Aww.
probably like a lot of other people on this list. They always,
No.
you know, for me, they feel personal, they feel
They are,
insightful,
yeah.
they feel raw, and it's actually like a real update as to what, you know, you're going through. And your last email, you shared a lot about the grief that you've been moving through, which I think is like, the emotion and experience of every human being on this planet, and B, that so many of us don't know how to handle it, don't know how to be in relationship to it, you know? And first of all, I just want to say I feel for you and everything that you've been moving through in the year of the snake, from jobs, community, relationships, and especially and most recently, your fur baby, you and Q's fur baby Sully, who looks like such a joy and light and is still here with us. And in your email, you spoke about grief as an undercurrent rather than an event. How does grief move through your body day to day, and how are you learning to befriend this part of the human experience?
I think that my life continues to teach me that grief and joy are opposite sides of the same coin. And so when we're exchanging with joy, we're also exchanging with grief. And we kind of just don't know when those investments are going to come up. And when I think of Sully specifically and how sudden his departure was and how difficult it was, I have been trying to remind myself of all the joy that we invested in the years that Sully was here. And I mean, all little creatures are so special. And I know I'm totally biased, and my community will back that bias up, but Sully was just like especially special and like tender and very like responsive and human-like. And so I think a lot of the time that like I wouldn't even be able to move my body through this grief if we didn't have all of that joy. I wouldn't even be able to get up. And I think one of the things that I continue to see through grief is it gives people this like opportunity to not just step up and show up for somebody that they love, but for the community, for people who are holding and witnessing people in grief. It's also a really brave and courageous act, and you have to be willing to go inside of yourself and like open the most tender part of your heart, and then kind of just like let it hurt and hurt and hurt, and also like let it be like tenderized by like, holding this person who's going through it, you know? And so I think, to me, one of the most important and sacred parts of community is these webs of holding grief and joy. And so when I think of walking my godson home only a few years ago, when Luke passed away after a really courageous battle of cancer, I was the only one there with him at the end, and we were waiting, and you know I was struggling, and the palliative nurses, they held me physically so that I could hold Luke and walk Luke out, because I needed to hold Luke's mom because Luke's mom couldn't do that, you know? And so, and it's the same thing. You know, I am so grateful that like we had like a really beautiful, we were able to like bring Sully home and have a really like beautiful last day. And like also we are really lucky that we had our community come to help like hold us. And again, yeah, I wouldn't have been able to like stand without that support from these people, and everybody knows how attached I was to Sully. And so yeah, and I mean the same goes for Joy. Like in the same way that everybody rallied around us to hold us through Sully, everybody rallies for the joy too, you know? Like when we did Glimmers last year, everybody was there. Like literally everybody in this room was there, and participating in different ways, whether that was like being in the audience or like playing music or videoing or being a volunteer, setting up like freaking twinkle lights on a on a tree that we found somewhere, you know? Like, so I think yeah, it's just both of it. It's these webs, and I think sometimes, you know, we forget about the both, and the joy and the grief. Like we need to rally for both, and celebrate both. And I think it can be really hard for people, you know. It's hard to witness and hold grief, and for some folks it's hard to witness and hold joy. And I think maybe the thing that feels sometimes more difficult about grief is, you know, it's obviously heavy, you know, or it can be heavy. But what I've been trying to tell myself lately is that it's not necessarily heavy. It just like has a weight, you know, and joy has a weight too. And like my body has a weight. Like we can't be weightless in this life. Like the point is like to be holding something. Like that sort of is the point of being human. And so yeah, I think maybe in the grief it can be hard sometimes to recall that. And I think the other thing about grief that sometimes is like wildly alarming is like the swings, right? It's like you're crying, you're laying on the floor, it's like, what is life? And then I don't know, you like turn around, you're like cackling, you're like dying, you know, you're just like laughing so hard about something, or like, you know, and that can be a lot to witness, you know. But to the thought of undercurrents in water, it's just sort of like riding it. And so I think it's really beautiful, and I hope that people like have people around that they can, you know, ride that with, and it's not like so alarming. People aren't like, ooh, you're cuckoo. It's just grief.
I love that you expressed all of that right now, and thank you for sharing and
Thank
reminding
you.
us that it's both, you know.
Yeah, we live in a culture that's like very death adverse, which you know, I just think is like averse.
Yeah, adverse.
Adverse. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. You know, poets don't, you know, we use our own words. So
Yeah, we make up new words.
Yeah, we live in such a death adverse culture, and I just like don't get it. And similarly, like from a kid, I was around death and funerals a lot. Like my grandmother helped prepare bodies like in a very traditional Jewish way, like for Jewish funerals. So I would just like be sitting there waiting for her because she was babysitting me, you know. And then I'd also go to the funerals with her. It's called Tahara. That's what she would do, Tahara. You know, and then I would go to the funerals, and kind of like same with my mom. Like I had never been to a wedding until I was like 19 or 20, but I had been to hundreds of funerals, you know, because that's like what my grandparents did. But so I guess I've always felt like maybe like death, I was gonna say I've always felt like death is close to me, which is like kind of like a bit morbid. That's not exactly the right vibe I'm trying to capture. But I think I've just maybe always felt like it's okay to be in conversation with death. Maybe that's a better way to say it. And I think from a very young age instilled in me that it's an honor to like be part of the process of walking somebody home, which I think, you know, like even, you know, in today's, so some people can get like freaked out by that, but it is really, it's a pretty profound thing to hold.
In Community, you described yourself as a holder and uniter. Did you choose that role or did it choose you?
Maybe I think like a little bit of both. When I started my like it was so different working with the kids and being a social worker, you know, like that doesn't really count. I was doing something and I was like holding space for them. But when I moved here and then I got when I started working with Vines, and I think just like looking at things, I was like, oh, I can help. Like I can help. I can make this a little better, a little more like,
infuse your magic.
Yeah, exactly. And so and then I think I started doing it, and now I'm doing it.
And it's more of you.
It's more, it does feel like more of me. And when I think of like being little and like helping my Bobby like pour wine for kiddish at shul, you know, like she was really like that, and so was my mom. Really, like we had family dinner every single Friday, like for I don't know, for 13 years. Like you know, just it was like that. I don't think I necessarily had that tendency like as an only child, and I was around it a lot. But as I've gotten older, I've like relaxed into this part of my personality that is a host and likes to bring people together. And you know, like we squish a lot of people in this apartment very often.
I love that.
It's cozy.
So I have 2 more questions for you, and then a really fun just rapid speed round, and then we're gonna get into you sharing some new work.
Okay.
Yeah? How are we doing, everyone? Yeah. So this question comes from Community, actually.
Oh.
So this question is from Hampton. Between the moment of inspiration and expression, is there a presence, internal or external, that you invoke or lean into when creating, when performing?
I mean, that's such a good question, Hampton. I definitely need to like lean into one a little bit more when I think sharing publicly, because I'll sort of just like let my nerves take over me. Like even at Logue last week, I was so sweaty for the first half because I was nervous, not because I was like, you know, like, like present and moving. I was just like, so, but when I'm writing, I just like, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I step outside of myself and I'm like observing myself and like observing everything around me. And then a lot of the time I just feel like I'm connecting to like the highest part of myself. That would be like the closest route to creator or source.
We ready for rapid fire fun?
Yep.
Okay, take a big deep breath. Don't overthink. First thing that comes to your mind. A book you recommend to everyone.
Black Liturgies by Cole Arthur Riley.
Poet you return to the most.
Andrea Gibson.
Ooh. Specific pen or pen color you always choose.
Muji Navy Blue 0.5.
That's a real writer when you know. What snack appears when you sit down to write?
What? Oh, what snack appears?
Yeah.
Anything that is a pastry, savory or sweet.
Local artist you are stoked on right now that everyone needs to know about.
Fleetwood Huey.
Ooh.
Shout out Fleetwood Huey. He's a rapper from Surrey.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I have so many. Like, I was like, should I name them all? Like, Oprah Tell and Desiree Dawson and Kim Folk Nation and Leo D.A. Johnson. Charlie St. J. Hampton.
Okay, what makes you laugh immediately no matter how serious life feels?
The video of this dignitary, I think from like Zimbabwe, mispronouncing conscientiously. And like,
how do they say that?
She's like, conscientiously, that's okay, I'll get it right. And then like everybody is just like laughing and like helping her pronounce it correctly. And it's like, she's like being sworn into office. It's awesome. Please look up the meme. It's so funny.
What truth are you currently learning to trust?
That what is for me won't miss me.
Okay, what do you hope people leave your presence remembering about themselves?
To be so bold and abundant and unapologetic in both your grief and your joy.
If a listener is carrying grief tonight, what would you want them to know?
To let it free, whatever that looks like tonight. If that's crying, if it's writing, if it's dancing, if it's looking at pictures or watching videos or like reading that old note. Do it.
My last one for you. For 2026, year of the horse, who I'm stepping into or who I'm becoming is?
The softest, strongest me. Mm-hmm.
Fanny, thank you so much.
Thank you, Cassie.
I appreciate this
Thank you
conversation
so
a lot,
much.
and I'm
Salamat.
yeah getting my Filipino heart over here. And so you have 2 poems you said you want to share.
Yes.
Do you want to intro it to us?
Yes. This is the first thing that I wrote since Sully passed away. And so I was having a really hard time writing, like right after he passed away. And then I randomly like found a little piece of his fur in the pocket of a robe.
Oh my God.
Because I'd like pulled a mat out of his fur probably. And then I was able to go into my office and write this. So grief has taken up residence in me, rearranged my disposition to live around the ache. Recognizable only by what is missing from me, see not the tear stains but remnants of loving well. The hollowing of despair dances with the desire to be fed by your presence, gnaws at the gift of your essence. Taste me your memory. Tongue me a language that knows your joy. Body me with the weight of your softness. The loss of you knocks on the door of gratitude, invites me to reside in the places your gentleness tenderized. Brings me to pray at your altar, wraps me in your unconditional love, returns to the site of your living, asks recollection to never stop visiting. Insists that grief will not reposition the perennial blessings of your spirit. Taste me your memory. Tongue me a language that knows your joy. Body me with the weight of your softness. How bittersweet this grief. Thank you so much.
Powerful. Ooh, I feel like the word that is coming over me is I feel tender. Witnessing you and learning about your story.
Thank you, Cassie.
Learning about what inspires you, what moves you, what hurts you, you know, and what makes you human. I really appreciated this conversation. I also really appreciate the community that came here. I really appreciate everyone who's tuned in, who's watching the live stream replay. This has been a really amazing conversation with Fanny Kearse. Please look them up online.
Yeah.
Pay attention to the next gatherings, especially the ones that are happening at Lobe.
Please go stream my poems. Yes. There's
That
so
too.
many that we've produced that are so good at Home Studio with Josh, and they're available on all streaming platforms.
The YouTube, the Spotify,
yeah, all of that. I don't know what the other ones are.
Yeah.
But CD Baby told me they're there.
You could just Google it. But yes, also to anyone out there who is a musician, a creative, an artist, or a dancer, and you have a story to share and you're based here in Vancouver, you could scan this QR code that's going to appear on the edited video and fill out a form. And perhaps one day you shall sit next to me. Maybe we'll be in house coats. Maybe we'll be in other coordinating outfits. But definitely want to share your story on this platform. My name is Cassie. This is Fanny Kearse. This has been TELUS STORYHIVE on location with Beats Eats.
And more!
Bye-bye.